Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a timeless secret, the power of not giving up, especially when things get the hardest. So, let's just start with a question I think we've all wrestled with at some point. Have you ever been so frustrated, so completely tired of trying that you just threw in the towel, only to look back later and wonder, man, what if I had just kept going for one more day? It's that exact feeling that leads us to a really powerful story. And this is where the parable of 3 feet from gold comes in. It's a true story from the American gold rush, all about a miner who had been toiling away for months, digging, drilling, absolutely convinced he was going to strike it rich. But after all that time, all that effort, with absolutely nothing to show for it, he just hit a wall. He was done. Convinced the mine was a total bust, he decided to cut his losses. So he sold all his mining equipment to a local junk man and just headed home, completely defeated. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The junk man, the new owner of all this equipment, he decided to take a totally different approach. Before he started digging himself, he did the one thing the first miner didn't think to do. He brought in an expert, a mining engineer, to survey the land. And what that engineer found? It was staggering. He discovered that the vein of gold wasn't a myth at all. It was real, and it was located just 3 feet from where the original miner had stopped digging. 3 feet. The junk man, as you can imagine, went on to make millions from that mine. So where does this incredible story come from? It's one of the cornerstones of a landmark book, Think and Grow Rich, written by this man, Napoleon Hill. And get this, he didn't write it during some booming economy. He published it in 1937, right in the absolute heart of the Great Depression. You see, Hill wasn't just some philosopher with a nice idea. He was a journalist who spent over 20 years of his life researching the most successful people of his era. We're talking titans like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Andrew Carnegie, all to figure out if there was some kind of repeatable formula for success. And after all that research, his core discovery really boiled down to this one powerful idea. He concluded that our success isn't determined by our circumstances, but by the one thing we have complete control over: our own thoughts. It's simple, right? Our thoughts shape our actions, and our actions end up shaping our destiny. Okay, so how exactly did Hill propose we master our thoughts? This is what's so cool about his work. He didn't just offer up philosophy, he laid out a practical framework for turning these abstract ideas into a tangible reality. And for him, it all starts with one powerful emotion: desire. And he wasn't talking about a casual wish or some vague hope. No, he meant a burning, all-consuming, definite desire for something specific. He saw it as the fuel for your thoughts, the thing that sets your mind's direction and keeps it locked on course. And then he turns this big idea of desire into a concrete, actionable game plan. Let's just walk through it. First, you have to be incredibly specific. Fix the exact amount of money you want, no fuzzy numbers. Second, determine exactly what you're willing to give in return, because as he said, there's no such thing as something for nothing. Third, set a definite date, a deadline. Then create a concrete plan to get there, and here's the kicker: you have to start at once. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. And finally, you write it all down in a clear, concise statement. This whole process is what moves you from just passively wishing to actively planning. But, a plan is only as good as your commitment to it, right? Doubts are going to creep in. That's where Hill's next big concept comes in: auto-suggestion. It sounds a little clinical, I know, but it's basically the practice of programming your own subconscious mind for success by constantly repeating that written statement you just created. I love Hill's analogy for the mind here. He compared it to a fertile garden. He said, constructive, positive thoughts are like flowers. They have to be deliberately planted and tended to. But destructive, negative thoughts? Those are the weeds. They'll grow all on their own, without any encouragement at all, if you don't actively manage the garden of your mind. Now, for decades, a lot of these ideas were seen as, just inspiring philosophy. They felt right, they sounded good, but the hard scientific proof wasn't really there yet. Well, guess what? Modern science is finally catching up. In fact, many of Hill's ideas, which were once considered pure self-help philosophy, are now being validated by modern neuroscience and psychology. Just think about it. Psychologists today talk about grit, that mix of passion and perseverance, as a key predictor of success.
That's really just a modern term for what Hill called a burning desire. And we now understand the brain's dopamine reward system. When you make progress towards a goal, your brain releases dopamine, a chemical that makes you feel good and motivates you to keep going. It's literally the science of perseverance. And maybe the most incredible part is neuroplasticity. This is the brain's ability to physically rewire itself. So when you push through a challenge instead of quitting, you are literally strengthening the neural pathways that make you more resilient. You're building a stronger brain.
So all of this brings us full circle, right back to that miner who quit just a little too soon. And more importantly, back to you and whatever it is you're working towards. The lesson here isn't just about mining for actual gold. The gold is your business, it's your fitness goal, it's your creative project. And the principle holds true. That final stretch, those last 3 feet, will almost always be the most difficult, the most discouraging part of the entire journey. And that's exactly why this book, written nearly a century ago, continues to sell millions of copies. The world changes, technology changes, but the fundamental human challenge of perseverance, of finding the strength to dig those last 3 feet, that is universal and absolutely timeless. So, what's the big takeaway here? The next time you're facing what feels like a dead end, when you're ready to pack it all in, remember the story of the miner. Remember that you could be just 3 feet from your gold. And then ask yourself one simple question.